We begin with the desperate search through the mountains of rubble in Surfside, Florida.
Newly obtained dispatches from first responders offer a new look at what happened in the aftermath of the collapse.
76, I see many people on the balconies. The building is gone. There's no elevators. This is nothing. I mean, it almost resembles a trade center.
Copy, no elevators, 131 Decatur.
Some people evacuating said it sounded like they heard a bomb.
Dozens of families gathered for a candlelight vigil last night as the search for any possible survivors now enters its sixth day. NBC News correspondent Antonia Hilton joins us now from Surfside, Florida. So, Antonia, at this point, it is still a search and rescue mission.
Thank you.
How hopeful are county officials and rescue teams that they can still find any survivors?
Good morning, Joe. You know, there is some tension here in Surfside right now between the words coming from officials and leaders who are maintaining hope that survivors might be found, who want people to keep praying and staying focused on the recovery and rescue efforts, and then with the families, many of whom are kind of coming to terms with the reality that we are on day 6, that 11 people have been confirmed dead, but 150 people are still unaccounted for. And so for many of them, that means that they are, facing a reality that their loved ones may not have survived that many days under the rubble. In fact, I actually met a woman who lives about a block away from the site of the collapse, and she had a friend who lived in that south tower that came down, and she told me she has basically just given up hope that her friend is still alive and has had to kind of move forward right now. And, tensions have kind of spilled over, and at times family members and loved ones have even yelled at officials in private meetings, demanding accountability, trying to understand what the pace is of this recovery. And it has been excruciating for everyone involved. I want you to take a listen to what the mayor of Miami-Dade said last night.
We have people waiting and waiting and waiting for news that is excruciating. We have them coping with the news that they might not have their loved ones come out alive and still hope against hope that they will. They're learning that some of their loved ones will come out as body parts. I mean, this is the kind of information that is just excruciating for everyone.
So officials are looking at a situation right now where they are trying to respond to the demands and the emotional needs of these families, but they are also supporting rescuers and first responders who are on an extremely dangerous rubble site that requires them to move slowly and meticulously through this process. And those two things do not go well hand in hand. There is pressure to have answers and closure, but there's also a need to be incredibly safe. Joe?
Antonia, we now know that a third lawsuit has been filed by victims' families. What is this suit alleging?
That's right. There is this new third lawsuit, and this is a class action lawsuit that is somewhat similar to the other lawsuits that have been filed in that it points directly at the condo association of the South Tower as responsible, as potentially knowledgeable about the extensive damage that may have been throughout the building in areas like the parking garage, the basement, the pool deck. And it also says that they're going to call for further investigation into other entities or people who could have had knowledge about this at various points over the last few years, and try to work to hold them accountable. The lawsuit really is focused around this plaintiff, Reza Rodriguez, who describes a horrific scene that night of the collapse in which she sort of awoke to the feeling of the building swaying like a piece of paper. She called friends and family in utter horror, saw the collapse out the window, and then tried to escape and sort of wanders through the building, ultimately finding a staircase that is separated from the walls of the building. And so you're just brought into the scene of the horror that night, and what she describes is utterly traumatic, but ultimately she is one of the lucky people who was rescued and has survived this collapse. And this is a class action suit, though, that is calling to hold this condo association accountable for the losses and the experience of those like Ms. Rodriguez, but also, of course, all of the lives that we're ultimately going to find out have been lost. Joe?
All right, Antonia Hilton reporting from Florida. Antonia, thanks so much.
With the Delta variant well on its way to becoming dominant here in the U.S., doctors are learning how long some vaccines may provide protection against the virus.
NBC News Now correspondent Priscilla Thompson joins us now in the studio with more on the encouraging news. So, Priscilla, scientists looked at the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. What all did they find about it?
Yeah, well, scientists are saying that Pfizer and Moderna offer an immune response that is set off a persistent immune reaction in the body, and that could protect from COVID-19 for years, plural. Take a listen to what one scientist had to say about it.
When you get 2 doses of the RNA vaccine, and that's in our study, we studied the Pfizer vaccine, this actually means that you have a big chance of having an immune response that could last for years.
Now, that study did not include the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, but researchers say that it may not have as long-lasting impacts as what we're seeing in Pfizer and Moderna.
So researchers have also, though we know, been looking into mixing some of the vaccines, and we're now getting an idea of what that might look like. What does that mean?
Yeah. So European countries, as a reminder, at one point were giving AstraZeneca as the first dose, but then offering alternatives for that second shot. And that was after AstraZeneca was linked to rare blood clots. And so this study essentially replicated that. So participants received a first dose of AstraZeneca and Pfizer as the second dose. And what they found is that combination produced better immune responses than giving a second dose of AstraZeneca. Now, researchers called the news encouraging, but also added that same-shot regimens should remain the default unless there's a good reason to mix and match.
And Priscilla, while we have you, we know summer camps are open once again, some for the first time in more than a year. But in Illinois, health officials are reporting one camp more than 80 cases. Most of them are teenagers. What more can you tell us about this outbreak?
Yeah, so this was a summer camp that occurred in mid-June, and what we know is that the camp was not checking vaccination status, nor did they require masks indoors. And this comes, of course, as the Delta variant is becoming the dominant strain in the U.S. Take a listen to what the governor had to say about that.
Already the Delta variant that sent Israel back into mitigation is a growing presence in Illinois. We expect it to dominate our cases statewide by the fall. The lessons here at home and across the world are a harbinger of what could happen here, particularly in low vaccinated areas.
The health department says they are still working to determine if any of these cases were caused by a specific strain.
All right, Priscilla Thompson, thank you. And it's always great to have you here on set with us.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thank you for all our COVID headlines. We'll see you soon.
All right, the historic heat wave that scorched the West is winding down. Now the East Coast is feeling the heat, and on top of that is also facing a tropical storm system.
NBC meteorologist Dylan Dreyer joins us from Bryant Park here in New York City with more. Hi, Dylan. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. You know, the heat wave that started yesterday is expected to bring us the hottest temperatures we've seen so far this year. In the Northeast, we have heat advisories and heat warnings in effect, and they stretch down the coast. And so often we say it's not just the heat, it's the humidity. And the humidity is going to make cities like Boston, New York, Philadelphia feel like it's well above 100 degrees. And the worst is yet to come.
This morning, across the Northeast, a scorching summer heat wave, dangerous temperatures and extreme humidity sizzling cities up and down the coast.
I'm surprised that it's this hot this early.
Northeast temperatures soaring past seasonal averages, with heat advisories stretching from New Jersey to Maine.
I try to drink a lot of water.
Philadelphia and Boston declaring heat emergencies, preparing for possible record-breaking temperatures. The heavy, humid air in many places feeling hotter than 100 degrees.
It's hot. The humidity. It's horrible.
People and pets cooling off however they can. New York opening city pools despite a lifeguard shortage coming out of the pandemic. Beaches along the coast already packed ahead of the 4th of July holiday.
They had summer soccer camp this morning, and I figured a good way to cool off was to come to the beach.
Off South Carolina's shores, Tropical Storm Danny strengthened before drenching the coast. It's already the 4th named storm of the year, months earlier than normal.
Now, Now, I know it's summer and it's supposed to be hot, but one friendly reminder here is that the heat really needs to be taken seriously because heat is actually the #1 cause of weather-related deaths in this country. I'm always carrying around this big jug of water, and this is exactly what you're going to need today. You stay hydrated if you have to spend a lot of time outdoors, and better yet, stay indoors as much as you can today. Joe and Savannah.
Dylan, I have that same water bottle, and I love the little encouragements. That is a great tip. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what's going on with the weather moving forward and get a check on your morning news now weather all around the country.
Yeah. Hi, Bill. Good morning.
Good morning. I think I was able to look closely at Dylan's bottle. I think halfway it says, "Don't give up."
Yeah, it does.
Like,
and it goes like, way to go. You're almost there. It's kind of fun.
Yes, head to the bathroom when you get to the top. Yes. All right. So, all right. So yesterday was, as we had advertised, was just an unprecedented, unparalleled day of heat in the Northwest. And now that we're starting to add up all the totals, because yesterday was the peak of it, look where Portland falls. So this is the list of all the major cities in the country and the hottest all-time temperatures that they've had. Phoenix, of course, on top of the list, as you'd expect. Vegas is second at 117, but Portland had 116 degrees yesterday. They're now third on the list. That's insane. And it's not like Seattle's not far back either. Seattle had an all-time record high of 108 yesterday. Seattle used to be like in the 30s or 40s. They've jumped so much higher on this list now. They are higher than Baltimore, D.C., and New York. So like Seattle's now like considered like a hot city. So today, 12 million people impacted. We've taken Portland out of the excessive heat warning. Good for them. A little bit cooler today in the Northwest on the coast, but not inland. And also 44 million people in the Northeast. So today, about 103 in Burns, Oregon, 110 in Spokane. But notice Seattle, you're back into the 90s. That's a typical hot day, at least for you. Reading 108. And as we head to the Northeast, this is where it's going to be just like yesterday, mid-90s on the coastal areas. It'll feel like about 100 to 110, a little bit cooler in the Great Lakes. Tomorrow's the last day of the heat wave in the Northeast. It'll still feel like 100 when you factor in the humidity. But as we go through Wednesday night, the relief will come in the form of some dangerous thunderstorms. We're going to be under a slight risk of severe thunderstorms, gusty winds, maybe even an isolated tornado or two. So everything comes, slowly we're going to round back into what we consider normal, if there is a normal anymore. But yeah, it's going to take a day or two to get there.
Yeah, and then it's July and August, so probably much more around the corner.
Yeah, lots that we'll be hearing from you. Thank you so much, Bill.
U.S. forces in Syria came under rocket fire on Monday, just one day after American fighter jets carried out airstrikes on Iran-backed militia groups in Iraq and Syria. The U.S. military spokesman said there were no injuries and later tweeted that U.S. troops responded by conducting counter-battery artillery fire. The Iraqi government is condemning the U.S. air raid, calling it a violation of the country's sovereignty, adding it would study legal options to stop it from happening again. NBC News correspondent Ali Arouzi joins us now from Tehran. So, Ali, a lot of countries involved here, Iraq, Syria, but you're there in Iran. What has been the reaction there in Iran to these U.S. strikes?
Good morning, Joe. Well, we've only heard from the Foreign Ministry spokesperson so far, who condemned the airstrike, saying the United States is taking the wrong path in the region and that Washington is continuing the failed legacy of the previous administration. He said instead of creating tensions and problems in the region, the U.S. should leave the region and let people establish their own security without Washington interfering, which only causes disruptions. Other than that, officials here have been uncharacteristically silent about the airstrikes. Of course, the militias in Iraq and Syria vowed revenge. They made good on that threat, obviously.
So, Ali, are there any signs that Iran-backed militia groups could step up attacks on U.S. interests in the region in the wake of these airstrikes?
Well, there's been an alarming increase recently in the number of attacks by Iranian-backed militias on U.S. assets, attacks that have become more sophisticated, using more advanced hardware. And the reality is, Joe, that they will probably continue with varying degrees of severity depending on the political climate, because ultimately their goal is to expel all U.S. troops from the region. Look, it was only last week that the Hashd al-Shaabi militia had a military-style parade in Iraq showing off their hardware, including tanks and drones, which are probably supplied by Iran. They look more powerful than the Iraqi army, and you don't flex that kind of military power if you don't want to send a message to the U.S. That they're not welcome. By and large, the attacks have been contained, but the smallest miscalculation could have massive implications for both Iraq, Iran, and the United States.
And Ali, any idea at this point, could this latest escalation in tensions have any impact at all on nuclear talks with Iran?
Ultimately, I don't think this will have a major impact on talks on Iran's nuclear program. If Iran wanted to make a bigger deal out of this, there would have been a much stronger threatening statement by a senior Revolutionary Guard commander vowing revenge. There wasn't one, which is an indication that they don't want talks to fall apart. Iran has been pushing the envelope with the Biden administration to figure out their boundaries, see how far they can go. And they were probably expecting a retaliatory attack, considering how many attacks there have been by Iranian-backed militias over the last couple of months. Clearly, the White House doesn't want to derail talks either. Jen Psaki said that even though Iran's behavior is extremely problematic, they're seeing an opportunity to move forward with negotiations.
All right, Ali Arouzi reporting from Tehran. Ali, thanks so much.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.